Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation. Hello?
Oh, it's Dan here.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going fine. You too?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for taking time to do this interview.
No problem.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, it's great to be able to talk to you again. It was last time we talked, we were talking about the last Witherscape album, but now we're able to talk now about everything that's going on with you right now, including the brand new live album from Nightingale, which is very awesome to see after all this time that there's an official live Nightingale album out.
Yeah, it was about time.
So how did that all come to be?
Well, it was nothing we planned really, but we found out after we had been booked for the Rock Hard festival that they were also recording it, and you could kind of buy then the recording for a certain amount of €100 and then do what you want with it, and we kind of decided that because of the size of the stage was big enough that you could actually get a decent separation between all the guitars and not bleeding into everything, and so that you could probably make I thought at first maybe just for us a nice documentary of the gig, but it turned out really good, and the recordings are actually better than some studio recordings I have received over the years, so it was not that complicated to turn it into a live record, and it was, first of all, was supposed to be like a download thing only, but then InsideOut got in touch with Alone Records from Spain, and they decided to work out a license and also release it on vinyl and CD, which all of a sudden made it actually a proper live album, because we in the band are still old enough to remember when records only came out on vinyl and cassette, some are even old enough to remember 8 tracks tapes, so in this case then it became really an official live album, and it's a great feeling, it kind of bring an end to the kind of the first chapter of the band, so to speak.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. Even without the intention of this being for a proper live album, it feels so great to be able to hear this in a live setting instead of just like a bootleg setup where someone's just like using their cell phone to record you guys. It's great to be able to hear like a real proper sounding Nightingale live album, and it's just like everything from the set list to everything that you guys do a little bit different from the studio versions or whatever the case is. It feels like such a great live set, and it makes me want to see you guys even more with just how great it sounds.
Yeah, it's good to hear, because just face it that this is as close as many of the listeners will come to Nightingale Live is to listen to this record, because we're not doing much of a gig and definitely no touring and nothing. So I just figured that it was kind of a gift to our fan base, and I wanted to keep it as if it was kind of like a live recording streaming. You have this all the time, from Wacken and Summer Breeze and all this, and then you have kind of on the fly mix of the sound without any fixing and trixing, any overdubs or any replacements or whatever. So the golden rule was to base the sound on the audience microphones, which luckily enough was very well recorded, and also the front of house guy was really good at mixing the music. So what I did was just kind of rebalance the front of house audience microphones with the close microphones for whatever balance I felt could be different. So there was not even a possibility to tune any vocals or whatever, because you cannot really tune a whole mix. Technology is not there, and maybe will never be. So I had to live with a few notes that are out of tune or some timing problems or whatever. But I felt that live records should be live. That they have been bastardized into this kind of let's keep the drums and do all again in the studio and overdub audience. I don't know, that's I don't even want to listen. I mean, I actually have a bit of a live album allergy myself. I have a problem when the versions are a little bit different than the studio albums in a way that doesn't make them better, more lazy, or you're missing all the backing vocals or this and that. So I wanted to make a live record that really proves that Nightingale do sound really good live, and we stay very faithful to the album recordings, and we don't do much shit that we cannot actually reproduce in a live setting. We don't have 5 different guitar overdubs. We have 2 guitar players with 2 hands, so we gotta keep it down to that, And I thought it might be a breath of fresh air in this whole live album universe, where everything is so super overdubbed and fixed and re-recorded. And the reviews so far have been really positive, and guys seem to like it,
Yeah, and that makes me so happy to hear that too, because, I mean, you said so many things that I could have said about the live album as well from the fan perspective. It's like, I really do appreciate that it does have that real authenticity to it. I mean, it's actually you guys playing live, and even if there is like some vocal mistakes or some like out-of-tune notes or whatever the case is, I would rather have that than having everything fixed in the studio and not having that live feel anymore. I mean, when you go to a live show, you know that there's going to be the occasional missed notes or vocal pattern missing or something like that. I mean, that's part of the live experience, but I'd rather have that when I go to a live show or listen to a live album. Otherwise, I could just listen to the studio album.
Yeah, so that's kind of the point I want to bring out, and also give it that kind of. I mean, my oldest brother and also my other brother who's in Nightingale with me, they were really early into this whole bootleg trading scene, and there was always this. They had a radio broadcast, they had a soundboard, all this, and there was a certain magic there, because that was actually the gig, and then you could compare it to the live recording from the same era. It's a completely different thing, and there's a certain rawness, there's a certain I don't know, it's just that I felt really that when I listened back to the multi-tracks, and thanks to the fact that the audience microphone was so well recorded, that made the whole thing happen. I think for me to try to emulate a live feeling that I had to do for some clients, that they'd get a recording of the gig, but there were no audience microphones. It means that there is no aura. You are not a listener looking and listening at the band from the audience perspective. You are more like a guy on the stage kind of sound on a live record, and that's not really. It's more of a rehearsal, So I don't know if I don't think there's too many bands out there that would allow for some of the mistakes that we let pass. And once you have to tune or replace something, you cannot use the audience microphone as the main source of sound. And there, the whole thing just falls apart. Then you have to start to fake an ambience using reverbs or, whatever. And that's really what I think is what made me want to mix it in the first place. I mean, I waited a year before I even listened to it, because I wanted to forget. My initial thing was like, half the gig sucked, and it got better at the end, But once I listened back and I forgot all my own impressions, it was not all that bad, And I realized that I could live with the little problems that was with pretty much every song. I could survive it for the whole experience to be made available. And if someone feel that they don't want to hear an out-of-tune guitar here and there, then listen to the studio album. It's not replacing the original version. And I think there are a few moments where it's actually better than the studio album in terms of the vibe that you get when everything click with a band playing together. You never get that because of course we don't record the album live. And I think it's it's nice. Actually my first real live album as an artist, that I released.
Yeah, I was also going to bring that up as well. I mean, with the amazing career that you've had so far, I mean, this is like the first proper live album I've heard from you, and it's really awesome to be able to see that with Nightingale because, I mean, from the fan perspective, I mean, I have such an attachment to so many different albums, and even with only 9 tracks being represented on this live album, it's great to see like the great array of music that's being shown off here, and just seeing that live perspective, the fans being so excited about it, hearing you guys play live, and just really enjoy everything. I mean, it's just a great experience.
Yeah, and it seems like since there were obviously no cameras, to capture the event, I wanted to make it as cinematic as you can do, meaning that the soundscape have that kind of natural 3-dimension to it, where again, rambling about this audience microphone perspective, but that's really where the magic happens in a live recording, because that's where you are as a viewer and as a listener. When you go to a gig, there's a certain distance, there's a certain reverberation, there's a certain chaos, that you don't get from these a little bit worse than the album sounding live records or whatever they should be called, So, I'm really happy because this is actually the first and maybe the only interview I do about this live album. I think it's nice that also the fans of Nightingale appreciate this, because it was not really like a planned move or a strategic, like, the next thing we do is a live record thing. It just kind of happened, and I thought maybe a download, and boom, all of a sudden you have a LP and you have a CD version of it. So yeah, I'm happy that I took the time to mix it,
And with that, I mean, obviously with not having it set in mind to have this be a live album, how did you guys decide about like what songs you are going to be playing live?
My brother is kind of the set list boss in the band, and he's got a real thing about always that you must have in his world. The ultimate set list is like a minimum of 1 track pro album, but because we were promised an hour, I think, around or somewhere in the early stage it was actually my wife who kind of got in touch with the Rock Hard because some of these guys personally from a long time ago, that, hey, let Dan play with Nightingale, because we're not that active. You never know really. You cannot just call a booking agent and book Nightingale. You have to get in touch with us, and it's this whole talking me into getting on a stage thing, But in this case, I just felt when I visited the Rock Hard Festival as in the audience a couple of times, I think I want to play here before I call it the quits as a live performer. And then it was around an hour maybe that we could play, and we just wanted to play A Lonely and Shadowland Serenade and Scarred for Life maybe, and a few other. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, the final contract that I got, playing time 45 minutes, that was like when we found out that we start playing at 4 o'clock until 4:45. So we had to cut a few tracks, and it turned out that based on the vibe and the flow of the tracks, that the iRecord was not represented at all then. But apart from that, there's one song or more from each studio album, and of course the inevitable Black Tears track that I think we played on every gig but one with Nightingale.
And speaking of that, I mean, I do love the fact that you do represent Black Tears in the sets and on this live album, having it playing last. How does it feel to have like this version of Black Tears when you're playing it with Nightingale?
Well, honestly, I think this version works a lot better than the original version, because it's actually kind of when you see it from a vocal perspective, the original is way too low. It's actually, I think, 5 notes lower. This one we play in a kind of almost a standard tuning, while the original was more like a baritone 7-string all the way down into B, with Edge of Sanity. And all the vocals are extremely more like a gothic type. But the version we do with Nightingale is more kind of like it's a bit raw, or some more kind of a bring out a hard rock song in Black Tears rather than this kind of gothic rock song that's also in there somehow, you know. And I prefer it in this key, and also I don't know, I like it, you know, more. For me, I mean, I played Black Tears just a few times with Edge of Sanity on stage, and I've done it, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times, whatever, with Nightingale. So I think it should be out there in a well mixed format together with all the cover versions and also with the original, because it's been in a part of my kind of rock star moments since, I don't know, it's been like 18 years now that Nightingale have existed as this kind of live band, you know, with all four members. And it's like, some people might think, oh, well, you play that song, you know, but once you write a track that is actually pretty successful, and you see how people freak out when you play it, and you get the audience reaction and the sing along and all this, you kind of melt, you know. Then all your weird ideas you have with integrity and this and that, they are just blown away. When it's your smoke on the water, or, you know, then you fucking play it. You know, it's you don't get that kind of reaction and vibe in your day-to-day life. You know, you get that only on stage for those minutes between you and the audience, and that makes, I mean, honestly, I don't think Black Tears is that much of a deal as a song. It's more of a phenomenon. I think it's kind of a 4-chord, weird kind of punk, goth, hard rock song, but it's fun to play, and the reaction you get, it's crazy. It kind of sums up also this whole Edge of Sanity thing, that's like what came out of that band still kind of lives on a little bit in this Nightingale live thing, you know?
Yeah, and again, you know, just from that fan perspective, I love the fact that that's being representative, and, you know, just like a change just enough to make it really fit into the Nightingale repertoire. I mean, just going off the 9 songs that are shown off of this live album, I mean, being able to showcase so much of what's been throughout Nightingale. I mean, ending it with a song that helped influence Nightingale, I mean, it's such a great way to be able to look at that set.
Yeah, and it's kind of that whole thing that I got really into, this kind of gothic flavored epic rock music that, I mean, face it, I really never was that much into hardcore goth. I was more into it when there was that gothic vibe was like, for me, like the Nightfall Overture kind of had that guitar melody vibe, and you have a little bit The Mission, a bit the first Sisters of Mercy record, and that kind of gothic vibe, you know. And there was something special around this time, and also this track is so extremely anti to be on a death metal record. I mean, there's some pretty brutal and fast stuff on Purgatory Afterglow, and then all of a sudden this kind of almost grunge track shows up, you know. It's weird that people loved it so much, you know, and it was just a track we wrote, and just like Eaton is by far my most popular song ever when you see in terms of streaming or plays on YouTube or whatever. That was also almost kind of a joke song. I wanted to write something that had that kind of bolt thrower Realm of Chaos with really stupid riffs, really simple, basic, and then this turns into your most successful song, you know? Black Tears is a little bit the same. Compared to some of that melodically intricate, weird stuff that I wrote for Purgatory Afterglow, Black Tears is a track that kind of sticks with people and still survive and been covered by I don't know how many bands, you know? It's weird, but cool.
Oh, very much so. And, you know, it's just like, it's awesome to see that, you know, it's like whether it is like Eaton or Black Tears, you know, just like some of the more simpler riffs that you've come up with over the years, the fact that you are able to not just like focus on that, but you are able to write some very intricate music, some very melodic music, some very heavy or brutal music than both of those songs. I mean, just like you're able to cover so much ground and able to keep that integrity that way because you're writing the music that you want to write.
Yeah, I do like I do like, there was a certain simplicity that I liked about a band like Nirvana, for example. And then on one side, I listened to exceptionally complicated music like Gentle Giant and stuff like that. And then as a kind of a counterpoint, I needed to listen to Negative Creep with Nirvana, which is basically just like going with your hand up and down the fretboard and just scream, I'm a negative creep. Oh, and I think that was just so primal. And on the other hand, I'd love to listen to some, like this Gentle Giant from Octopus with all this weird stuff going on. It's like I need to the different parts of my musicality, it needs food, both this raw primitive stuff and this complicated weird stuff. And I think that's what I like sometimes, to sit down and try to write something that's really raw and primitive. It's not as easy as one can think, because it quite easily becomes almost, what you call it, a pastiche or a joke, like you make fun of a simple death metal song. Where I have so much respect for like World Eater from Bolt Thrower, or where the Slime Lips from Morbid Angel, and that kind of stuff where you have that vibe, and got it in the end, was like a happy accident.
Yeah, and it's funny when you were mentioning that, I was just like imagining in my head. I mean, I'm not sure if this is something you would ever attempt to do or anything, but it's like I want to hear you cover Negative Creep now. I want to hear you cover Gentle Giant to get like those impressions on there, just to see how like it all transformed into the musical styles that you've been able to accomplish up to this point.
Yeah, I've actually done Gentle Giant enough. There's a bonus song with Witherscape from Octopus called Cry for Everyone. I think I spent like 10 times more on that cover version from the Inheritance sessions than I did on any Witherscape song. It was such a personal thing to cover Gentle Giant. I mean, that's one of those more simple rock songs, but still there's some instrumentation there that is just like freaking crazy. And I actually got the idea to implement a certain weird kind of guitar playing in the riff from Twilight from Negative Creep. So I've kind of thrown in my little tribute there already.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, yeah, with the first Witherscape album, I never did actually get to hear the bonus tracks that came off of that. I just had like the proper studio album when I picked it up, so I didn't realize that you already covered Gentle Giant. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to look that up and check that out.
Yeah, it's probably all over YouTube, but it's also a part of the download, and I think also the streaming version of the new Tomorrow EP have the bonus tracks from the Inheritance as kind of a bonus. There was one format where they were never released, and then Century Media felt that would then make an excellent bonus, blah, 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 But it's kind of a cool cover version. I'm happier with the instrumentation than with the vocals, but overall it's really one of the better cover versions I did, and it's really strange choice, But there's also a Judas Priest cover called Last Rose of Summer, which is also the most unlikely Judas Priest track to ever have a cover version. That's why we chose it. So I think me and Ragnar had a discussion of which Judas Priest song you should not cover, and that was like so soft and kind of like 70s love ballad kind of thing, So let's make a cover version of that one. That's weird enough,
Although it's funny because it does oddly work that way. I mean, there's so much ground that's covered in Witherscape, whether it's very heavy, brutal sides to it, the more proggy sides or the more melodic sides. So having a song like that as a bonus track, I mean, it does oddly fit.
Yeah, I think it was also a way for me to try to bang it into people's heads that Witherscape is not a death metal band. Witherscape is a music group that do have growling vocals, and that's the only thing that sets us apart from being just a normal music group. We can be as heavy or as soft or as weird as we want to be, but people are really quick and trying to get that into this whole melodic death metal, dark metal, thrash metal, or whatever. I wanted it to be something where I could experiment a little bit more and don't really paint myself in a corner, And I think making some cover versions like we did also on the new Tomorrow EP, where there's some heavy metal songs, there's a Kiss cover, and this and that, I want to establish us as more of a normal hard rock and heavy metal band, but we do have growling vocals from time to time, That's really more what it should be labeled as.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach and a great way to look at it as well. I mean, that just like you said, it does incorporate sometimes more of the death metal elements, especially with the growls and everything, but there is so much more to it. I mean, like my favorite Weatherscape song is The Examiner, which doesn't feature any death metal elements at all, and it has more of that great melodic ballady feel to it, and that's what I appreciate, especially with the latest Weatherscape album. I mean, there is so much ground that is covered in that album with original music, whether it's extremely heavy, extremely proggy, or extremely melodic. I mean, there's so much ground in there, and that's what I really love in a band, in a band like this.
Yeah, that's also what I want to present, like to just be able to kind of, that's actually a really old idea. I probably told you this the last time we spoke about it, but I had an introduction to the very first version of a song called Uncreation that I wrote pretty much like 21 years ago. And I forgot how to play it because the way the chord sequence is a really strange finger setting, and I never could figure out again how to play that fucking thing, And I always wanted to reuse it for Crimson 2, or I wanted to use it for Nightingale or whatever, but I couldn't figure it out. And just one day, when I was writing the Weatherscape record, amongst working with my other mixing and mastering, my fingers just kind of got into that first position, which is completely strange. You don't play that chord ever, And there it was. Then it all came back. I think, there you are, and then the rest. It's more like finger setting that naturally progress. Then every muscle you've moved that finger there, and then you have that whole lick. So that's pretty much, that's the intro, and that's the verse, and that's the chorus. That's the whole song, basically, those few chords, and that chord progression. So that was not meant maybe to be as light and without growling and so, but it just turned out that this little piece of music that originally was just an intro, it was never featured again in the track whatsoever, was strong enough to kind of build a whole song upon, So yeah, I would say it's one of my top favorite songs also from that record. It's got that epic rock vibe that I like.
Oh, very much. The same with me as well. Going a little bit off track here with outside of Nightingale and outside of Weatherscape, if I remember correctly, there's some unicorn news that's coming up, correct?
Yeah, we first of all, we did release finally with the something I've been working on for a very long time, was like the collection of worlds. Kind of, maybe we call it a demo at the time, but secretly I always wanted it to be an album released on cassette, because that's really what it was. It's like a 40-minute playing time, and we just never made it to vinyl in this time, And I love those songs so much, but the vocal delivery was done by me when I was 16 or 17, and it just doesn't cut it, So sometime I think in 2010 or 2011, I re-recorded the vocals, but I just couldn't find the sound that I was looking for, because it's actually recorded on a 4-track cassette machine called a Porta Studio, and there's some really weird frequency imbalance where a track, you have like piano, bass, and drums on one track, just like Beatles, so you kind of summed it all together, and there's really no way to separate stuff, and the blend was always a little bit weird, where some cymbals were extremely bright and trebly, but the rest was kind of dark, so there was no way to just add treble. It would just bite your head off every time you hit a cymbal, and the tools were not there to get into this kind of audio restoration without making it sound completely dealt with, I wanted it to sound as natural as possible. And it wasn't until just, I think a year ago or so that I finally mastered all these weird dynamic tools to actually get the recording from 1989 up to a point where it almost sounded re-recorded, And I just kind of decided that I gotta finish this, and then it was decided that we should put it up on Bandcamp, and I saw now that we have sold almost 100 copies, and we're so happy because that's just how many tapes we sold in 1990 when it was released. And just this very day, actually, I got an email that there is a label that when we want to, we will have it released on LP and CD as well, which is I don't even know if the band members know this, but now you know. And that's pretty much what I was dreaming about when I started this whole resurrection of that demo, And apart from that, we will in a month maybe or so, release the other pinnacle of the Unicorn times, which is the Weirdest of Tales, which is, if Slayer Raining Blood is an album, then the Weirdest of Tales is also an album, because it's like 32 minutes, I think I mastered an album today that was like 33 minutes, so yeah, it is an album. And that's like, unfortunately the master tapes are not available anymore, so we actually got in touch with the guy who did our cassette copies in 1990, and he, for some weird reason, still had the original masters that were used to make the cassette copies. So we have a really good reproduction from that initial mix, and I just remastered it. And the funny part is that we find out that somewhere along the line, all the cassette copies were actually half a note too fast. So I sound a little bit younger than I had to, and the key is wrong for all the songs. So we actually slowed down the demo to reach the normal 440 hertz. And that was all in the old times, reel-to-reel machine. The engine was a little bit fucked up, and then it recorded at the wrong speed and played back then on another reel-to-reel machine. And, it's also kind of a restoration. And that will also be released on Bandcamp. And when everything works according to plan, there is a legendary rehearsal that we did with Unicorn in the summer of 1989, where we play, I think, 5 or 6 songs the day before a big gig. That was recorded with a VHS camera, and I want to have that transferred to like a really professional capture of a videotape. I know you cannot make gold out of shit, but at least you can give it a decent digital transfer, and then I will kind of try to make each song as large as Bandcamp allows an additional file to be. So, and in the end, I think you could have pretty good video and audio quality of that legendary rehearsal live thing, and I think that will then serve as a really good bonus feature, and maybe one day that one will also come out on vinyl and CD. That would be like totally a dream come true. But for me, at this point, that Collection of Worlds Resurrection will most likely be released on LP and CD. It's just like a late Christmas present, deluxe,
Oh, and it's so cool to see that. I've although I haven't gotten to hear everything that Unicorn has been able to do. What I've heard from the band, I loved so much from, and it's great to see that there is getting to be some new reproper material that's going to be coming out. With the remastering and live rehearsals and everything like that. It's great to see this kind of representation of Unicorn. It's so cool to see that.
Yeah, it was an even stranger thing is actually that my band that I had before Unicorn, actually a band that turned into Unicorn, it's called Ghost, and it's not this with the satanic pope and all this, it's the real Ghost, like we call it, not the other Ghost. And we existed from 1983 until 1988, where we metamorphosed into Icarus and then became Unicorn. So we kind of never really quit, we just kind of evolved, And there's this guy who's actually a bit of a fanboy from the early Ghost stuff. You have also a label, and guess what? He's releasing a double vinyl and a CD with pretty much the best of Ghost. It's 30 songs, and it's crazy, And the biggest magazine in Sweden is called Sweden Rock Magazine, and the new number that came out, I think yesterday, had 7 pages of my old Ghost, or our old Ghost, And actually, the guy who's having this new Ghost, that kind of Pope guy, he is making like a comment about my old Ghost. and talking about this and that. But so it's kind of the more popular ghost find out about the old one, and it's in the same feature, which is kind of cool. And it turns out that he wanted to work with me as a producer for the first Ghost album, but the label didn't want me to be involved because, I guess, for whatever reasons, And that was also weird. I had no idea that he even knew who I was. So yeah, that's also big news from my world.
Yeah, and that is just so cool to be able to see that too. And like I never knew that about the first of the new Ghost band, knowing that he wanted you a part of that. I mean, that would have been so cool to see that. I mean, it was around that time when I discovered them that I really started to discover your work too. So it would have been really cool to see those two worlds combined in a project like that.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was only doing mixing and mastering, so I probably would have had to shut down a project like that anyway. And having the name, I'm kind of picky with this, even if the band is over and even if all the members are dead or whatever, you don't pick a band name from something that existed before. That's kind of
true.
taken. So, but he honestly didn't know about my Ghost and the pre-internet and all this. It was not really so easy to find out about other bands, and I know that there's a few other Ghosts also, but we had no idea. But anyway, it's just a cool story that you have this, the archive freak in me gets so much goodies, you make your first proper live album, you have your first real band that was like pretty much all I thought about for 4 years, making a double vinyl with all that comes with it, with the layout, with the inner sleeves, and there's so much pictures, there's so much, and then this big ass 7-page spread in the biggest magazine, and I think guys will just think, what the fuck, but I don't care,
Yeah, and that makes me so happy for you too. I mean, just being able to not only have a brand new Nightingale live album for the first time, your first proper live album, but being able to help represent whether it's a Ghost or Unicorn, it's just being able to show off this kind of retrospective over this short amount of time, and showing fans of your stuff, just everything you've been able to accomplish, whether it's brand new or from the past, all getting some great limelight that's going on.
Yeah, and I think it's you're not getting any younger, so it's there, you feel that you need to put all a lot of loose ends together and kind of focus, and make sure that there's it's a great kind of collection of what you were doing. And I think I'm in that phase right now where I like to just kind of close a lot of these open books, or what do you want to call it, So it's really good. I've also done some remixing of some old projects that I also had from these old porta tapes, my old punk rock band, and some solo stuff that was never released, and this and that. And I'm just kind of working with this old 4-track stuff. You need to know what you're doing when it comes to restoration and mixing that stuff, and it's actually boot camp, to kind of work that stuff out. You get to learn your tools, what you have, how to deal with all the weird sonic anomalies that you have on this old stuff. And it can come in handy when you get can you remaster the early demos from this band, or and then you have that kind of experience, So I might release that somehow, I don't know, on YouTube or Bandcamp or whatever. And it's also this, I want this to be available, because some of the stuff was, once it was released, it sounded terrible because I was not really good at that mixing stuff, or it was released on a really weird format and exists only in 5th generation cassette copy. And also the other members of those bands have kids now, and maybe they want to hear what their daddy was doing when he was 16 and playing melodic punk rock, It's kind of a thing also for the other guys in the other bands. that I had, that this material finally is like locked down into like, this is it, this is what Ghost was all about, his 30 songs that we felt was representative, and that's all you need, move on with your life.
Oh, that's, again, I just gotta say it again, it's so cool that you are taking the time to be able to have your part of this, and just whether you're working on yourself, having it outsourced, or whatever the case is, just being able to showcase everything you've done, from to Ghost to Unicorn to everything else that you have coming up, or of course with the other work that you do outside of your own music as well. I mean, just the fact that you are staying this busy and being able to showcase everything that you're doing, all aspects of music. I mean, it's great to see that you are in that position where you are constantly able to do that, and being able to show off what you've done in the past and continue to keep working on in the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really weird privilege that just you have some of this old stuff lying around, and people are very interested in helping you releasing stuff, and so it's all thanks to this whole Edge of Sanity. My involvement with the death metal stuff kind of made it possible for me to release Unicorn stuff, or to have a Ghost double album, So it was that detour over that whole death metal thing and becoming some kind of death metal producer guy, that was never really in the cards for me up until the autumn of 1988. That's when that whole thrash speed metal virus just hit me full on, and it lasted for a couple of years, but still to this very day, it's in me, and I have to, I work with it on a daily basis in the studio, and I'm writing a new record now, which is some kind of death metal solo album that I've been talking about, I don't know, for the past 5 years, but now it's really happening, and now it's really being recorded, and I'm hoping to release it this year, but at the end of it, I guess, makes sense. And it's also kind of a full circle for me, because it was really in the autumn of 1988 where this whole thing happened, where I turned from someone being like a little bit interested and a little bit curious about that more violent, brutal form of music than, the AOR and prog that I listened to. And just very, very like me and my personality, you switch from black to white, or white to black in this case, and just go full on, And there's a lot of other kids around my age that's born in like 1973, 72. They all had the same epiphany around that time. It was something to do with your age and like the whole vibe of the music industry, where you wanted something that was faster and harder, and it just started appearing, And it's really weird how all came together, but I'm happy to be in this position where guys basically throw record contracts at you when you want to do something, which is cool.
Oh, definitely. And hearing you say that too about the new project that you're going to be working on, the more death metal centric one. I remember we talked about that last time, that you had that in mind of being able to do that. It's great to see that it is coming more to fruition. I mean, as much as I love what you do with like Unicorn or Nightingale, I mean, I really do appreciate the death metal side of what you can do too. So the fact that you are revisiting that and doing a new spin on that for a new album, I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, the stuff I have this far, it's turning out really cool. It's the only problem is that I'm so damn picky with this stuff. Because I needed to. I just don't want to put out a record that's kind of fast and brutal and this and that. I want it to be good also. I want every riff to be, wow, that's a cool riff, and this means you have to come up with, 200 riffs and narrow that down to maybe 40, and that's how it works. And just to sit down and write those 200 riffs that you can later on just kind of throw away and find that gold nugget in between, that's really hard work. And I've been inspired from time to time, and then I write a lot of riffs. And if one good riff came out of a session where I sat on the sofa with my acoustic and wrote 10 riffs, then I'm happy. That's 1/4 of a song.
Oh, exactly. So also with that in mind, I mean, with that album that you're focusing on, is there any other original music that you're working on this year, or are you just focusing more on the mixing and mastering?
Well, There's always the hope of doing something with the Second Sky album that I've been working on now officially since 2004. But that's kind of like a special little pet project of mine. But there's been work done, whenever I have some downtime, I try to spend at least a few hours working on that record. But that's kind of the one that I will focus more on when I'm ready with all these other loose ends that I had flying around, with various Unicorn this and Ghost that and solo albums, Nightingale live records, and then it will be trying to work that record out will be a really top priority. And I just thought about it yesterday that I will probably try to finish one song first and get that out there. Some kind of it's kind of to everyone except the extreme diehard fans of my music. This is a new project, and the fact that it's been so many years in progress is just that basically it's not like a Chinese democracy thing where I've been locked up in a studio for 14 years and get nothing done. It's just that sometimes there are like 9 months in between opening that session only to find out that all I did last time sucked and you're back one step, but all the songs are it's all there, and these are to me the best songs that I have ever written in the genre of this kind of progressive rock, epic rock kind of thing. So they need my full attention, and it's really hard because all the other projects I have, there is a budget, that can cover my costs for the time I spend doing it. But the Second Sky budget was blown in 2004, which is unfortunate, because no other project that I have ever done needs more time than this one. So it's a bit of a catch-22. I want to work with it, but I cannot afford it because I have to pay the bills, So we'll see what happens, but it will be done eventually, and that's all original music. And there is still hope for another Witherscape record, of course. It's more, we came to a point where we did so much in a short time, and I don't want to bring out another record which is not a great progression from the Northern Sanctuary, which I am still exceptionally proud of. And I also want it to be not that record again, with the best of luck, similar quality of songs. I want it to be something different. And it's not so easy to just invent that kind of new direction. But I do know that I would like to work with more players, more writers, and bring in new influences and kind of twist it around a little bit, but it's not really more than just a few riffs that's not brutal enough to be on the record I'm doing now. They will automatically go for review then later on in the Witherscape setting, but the project is still alive and kicking, but in my world there will be years and years before anything will be released,
Yeah, and that's definitely the right approach to go with it. Whether it is a Second Sky or Witherscape or a new Nightingale or the solo work or whatever the case is, I would rather have it be quality over quantity. Rather than just like putting music out there to say that you got music out there and now putting out music you're proud of. I'd rather have that weight and make sure that it's everything that you want that album to be, or as close as you can possibly get to it before I get to hear it as a fan, because I know when you really are able to put some of your work 100%, I know it's going to be some of my favorite work, so I'd rather have that weight than have it be rushed out. So you're going about it the right way.
Yeah, I have to. There is when I was working as a musician with touring, you have to put out a product to go on the road, blah, 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 but I am not. It's kind of a hobby, I work 8 hours a day mixing and mastering other people's music. It's really hard sometimes to find a focus to actually sit down and write and work on your own. But there is still the drive, there's still this that I want to get that stuff done. I want to have achieved that these records are ready at one point, the Second Sky and my solo thing, and it will take time, but you cannot really release an album today to make money. It was actually a case in the early 90s where you could record really cheaply, get a really good deal, and sell lots of records and actually make a shitload of money just sitting on your ass making this kind of music that you couldn't even perform on stage. But those days are over, you know. And so, I mean, looking at how much money you get pro stream or whatever, you're lucky when you can buy a cup of coffee for like 100,000 streams, which is completely weird. But that's really not what's driving me. It was at one point, you know, I've created a lot of projects in the mid-90s to pay the bills because there was a demand for satanic death metal or whatever. You put Infested together and you got an advance, and that paid the bill for that month. But that's not the case anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a catch-22 when it comes to the creativity, when it comes to that. I mean, the fact that you are able to, like, focus more time and not having to put out music that you don't have 100% a love behind, but, you know, obviously with the money aspect that comes with it too. I mean, it's always nice to be able to pay your bills, and like you said, like getting a cup of coffee, and, you know, it's just like with all the streams and everything and not getting paid enough and everything. So when you do go into music, especially at this time, whether you've been in it for decades or you're starting off brand new, you gotta have that love for the music. Otherwise, it's just going to be unfulfilled.
Yeah, I think it's what should be driving every composer, you know? There should not be this, I have to have this ready by Friday, or I cannot pay the guys because we need to do that gig because pay this, you know? That music needs to be written and performed just to fulfill this, what is really normally from a job, which you hate. You're like a bus driver or whatever thing, you know? That, for me, was always weird to think that I had to do this for a living and see it as something you do when you work as a cashier at some supermarket, you know? That was never really going to happen. But to be doing the engineering work of mixing and mastering, that's my dream job, you know, and I'm so blessed to have the ability to work and make a decent living doing this, what I do. But sometimes when I think about my friends that have to come up now with a new album, more successful than the previous one, and the only way to really make money is to go touring more often, you know, and compete also, make bigger shows because the other band just upped their production. You need to do it too, and then you make less money also, you know, doing the touring because of the production cost. And it's not really a glamorous life anymore with this whole being a musician. And I see more and more band members quitting, you know, for family reasons, or, you know, you just cannot make it in this industry anymore, you know. It's really, really sad, actually, that this whole download thing just, it's finally really paying off, you know. We are kind of, it's been a long time coming, but it's at this point now where it's really hard for a young band to actually earn any good money, also because everyone is touring. There's gigs everywhere, so they're also not paying the live performers. You don't get anything really from streaming, and it's kind of pay to play, but also on all, you know, pay to play also for the recording. You have to pay it because you don't get any budget. So it's, I'm really doing it for the passion of writing and recording my own music. There's no other reason, really.
Although it's funny you mentioned that. I was just thinking about this while you were mentioning that. When you do the mixing and mastering, and you deal with so many different projects every year, and, you know, obviously with either a very low budget, lack of budget, or knowing that there's not going to be much of any profit that does come from the music, do you notice like anything as far as like a musical integrity when it comes into the different bands that you mix and master? I mean, do you feel like they are in it for the right reasons, or do you feel like they're just doing this to like follow trends, or have you noticed anything like that?
No, I think what's been going on lately is that you kind of weed out the weak a little bit with this whole scenario, where some bands might have kept, you know, things going because they knew that there was this kind of $20,000 budget thing for the next record where they could record as cheap as possible and then kind of cash in and get money, you know. But with that whole aspect gone, I think a lot of bands call it a quits that didn't have the heart in it, you know. And there's so much love and devotion with the bands that I'm working with. They are building their own studios, or they're paying out of their own pocket for the recording and for my work. Meaning that they are, I mean, there was this one band from Spain. They actually went and took a big ass bank loan to work with me and the guy recording it in Spain. I think, fuck, that's really serious. You know, I never thought of it in this way, that these guys probably needed, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 euros to get that album full cycle. They go really recording everything in a studio, and then I do the mix and mastering, and it was a pretty big production. And I think, fuck, they take a bank loan. I had to send invoices to a bank person, and you know, it was like, wow, this is really how it is now. Then the bank is kind of filling in for the label, which normally is this, that you get your budget and this and that. But yeah, I hope it all went well for them. But that was kind of a wake-up thing for me. That's what some bands are willing to do, you know. And I love it when bands are really passionate. And of course, there are times when I wish that bands would go to a studio and record rather than maybe in someone's living room, or, you know, program the drums rather than recording real drums. But what can I do? I mean, for me, it's important that the bands get the songs out there. And seeing that I've had a few bands starting from nothing, and they are now pretty successful. I think that's really like Deserted Fear, for example. It's a German band and I mixed their very first recording, and it was all done in the rehearsal room. And now they you know, stuck with me for the mixing, and now they were on tour with Cavalera Conspiracy and Insomnium on this big Headbangers Ball tour, and you know, they're on Central Media now rather than some smaller label, and they kept at it, you know. They kept writing good stuff, didn't change their style too much, and relentless gigging and touring and promoting and so. And yeah, I think that's what keeps me going, you know. That the next Dissection and the next Opeth or Catatonia or whatever, it could be that band that I just heard from, but I will know that in like 5-6 years.
Yeah, and you know, it's just that's got to be a great feeling personally too. I mean, whether it is like a band that's willing to get these loans from banks just to secure the fact that you can work with them, or like you said with Deserted Fear, I mean, like really being able to build themselves from nothing to being able to get on these great European tours that are going on. I mean, the fact that you were able to mix and master these bands, and you know, just continuing on this legacy of heavier music or prog or whatever you get sent to you for mixing and mastering or producing. I mean, that's going to be a great feeling as well.
Yeah, this is what keeps me going, you know, and I like to dive into more other styles, you know, but of course there's still this whole death metal thing that's pretty much the core of what I do. But I've done some more melodic stuff. That I'm mixing a band right now that there's no growling, but it's still pretty aggressive metal. And there's been mastering some kind of Southern California punk rock, like Bad Religion style, and done some kind of stoner 70s rock, and I'm mixing an album with a band called Refuge, which is actually the lineup from the band Rage.
Oh, yes.
From the Perfect Man kind of time. But since I'm also working with the other Rage, which is the singer from Refuge with two other guys, and it's a bit complicated, but I'm also doing this Refuge album at the moment, and it's really good. And that's nothing like death metal. It's just like really good aggressive metal. And Motor Jesus I'm working with, and they are more kind of action rock metal thing, kind of Metallica meets Helicopters, kind of meets, I don't know, you know, this kind of Life of Agony, corrosional conformity kind of music. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you are able to like adapt yourself into all these different styles too. I mean, like a Refuge, I saw them a couple years ago at Prog Power USA, and it was great to be able to see that original lineup formerly of Rage. You know, it's like it's great to see that you're working with them and with Rage as well, and then you know, being able to adapt into different styles, like more of the prong stuff, the more of the like early hardcore stuff, the corrosion conformity kind of stuff. I mean, just like there's a lot of things that you're able to adapt yourself to with, and you know, if it wasn't for like being able to adapt yourself with your own music, you know, just like being able to showcase these different sides, it might not be able to transfer as well with when it comes to mixing and mastering. So it's great that you are able to adapt so well into all these different situations.
Yeah, it comes from me being, I see music as just like one big thing. It's not so necessary what it's called, or if it's fast or whatever. So some mix and mastering persons might have a more narrow music taste, and then it's hard for them to go full on with something that's kind of out of their comfort zone, what they're normally listening to. I mean, I would pretty much mix anything except maybe rap and hip hop, because I hate that music and I have no connection to it. But it's like I love everything from super sappy ballads to really violent death metal to really weird, strange prog to super straight like AC/DC style hard rock. It's all there. As long as it's a good song, it's a good melody, and it kind of goes in through one ear and kind of stays in your head a little bit and then goes out the other ear. Then it's good enough for me. I don't care what genre, who wrote it or what year or whatever. And I think, like you said, that's a good thing to have as a mix and mastering engineer who wants to have a little bit of a broader horizon. But still, it seems that I'm still through my whole career, that it's much focus on this death metal thing, which is okay. And everyone needs that kind of thing, that connection. Oh, it's the guy who worked with Metallica, that's the guy who worked with Slayer or whatever. You need that. It's your kind of your card, like, yeah, I did that album. And even though it doesn't necessarily mean that I would mix something today that sounds like Somberlane or Orchid or Dance of December Souls or Opus Nocturne, I made those albums with those bands, and the guys who contact me are fans of those bands, and they love the idea that I could also work with them on their album. Just like I would be freaked out with working with like someone, who to have Scott Burns mix my death metal record because he mixed Leprosy, that would be so cool. And I get how they're thinking, and for me it's super cool. I'm lucky that I have this history and that luck,
Yeah, and from what I can tell, I mean that it's far from finished. I mean, with whether it comes to your original work or the mixing and mastering, I mean, you are keeping so busy, and I can tell that you are enjoying it as well. I mean, when you're talking about these bands and when you're talking about your own music, I mean, the passion and the love are still there, and I love seeing that. I mean, there's so many people that can get burned out after X amount of years in music, and the fact that you still do have that passion and drive to either make your music or make other bands sound better with your mixing and mastering or producing skills. I mean, just the fact that it's still going on like that, I mean, it's so great to be able to see that.
Cool. Yeah, it's really a good feeling.
Well, awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for taking all this time to be able to talk to me about everything that you got going on in your world right now. And of course, as we started off, talking about the brand new live album from Nightingale, Rock Hard Live, which is available now through InsideOut. And everything to look forward to coming up in 2018 or later on if something comes up, or any of the mixing and mastering jobs that you're going to be having albums come out for this year. I mean, I'm very excited to see all this different stuff that you got going on right now. And once again, it was a complete honor to be able to talk to you about all of this.
Yeah, it was cool. Thank you.
Oh, not a problem. Before we're done, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet? Hello? 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 Yeah, I think I lost you there for a second. I'm not entirely sure what happened.
1 hour of non-stop Skyping can be the best for any router.
I didn't realize it was already past that. I guess when there's good conversation going, time just flies by.
Yeah, not a problem. I don't think I have anything to add, honestly. I think I told you more than enough, more than I should maybe. But it's, I'm excited. I like it when there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's also, in my music and also at work, with masterings and mix work and all this. It's when I'm happy, So there's pretty much nothing to add. I'm happy if people check out the Nightingale live record. I think it's a really a cool piece, actually,
Yeah, very much so. And like I said, I mean, as a longtime fan of Nightingale, it was just awesome to see that there is now a live representation, because I know you're not always the biggest fan of doing live shows, so the fact that there is like a great representation of the Nightingale catalog in 9 songs for a live record, I mean, it's so cool to be able to have that in my catalog now and be able to enjoy that Nightingale experience in case I never get to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also for me a little bit as kind of a fan of music history that there's always a live record of all my favorite bands, from Marillion to Rush to also bands like Kiss, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, or whatever, that I once felt was like the best band ever. They always had live albums, even though I may not think they are the best or even care too much about them, they do have them, so it's kind of to be a proper band, you have a whole bunch of studio albums, a kind of a best-of re-recording thing, and a live album. It's like all cool, it's full house.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that's a great note to end on. I mean, getting back into the Nightingale album, of course, but again, I thank you so much for taking the time to be able to talk to me, especially with your busy schedule and everything going on. The fact that we were able to talk this long about everything that you got going on, whether it's in front of the speakers or in the producing box or mixing and mastering, whatever the case is. I mean, I'm glad we were able to cover so much ground, and it was just awesome to hear your perspective with everything that you got going on.
Cool, yeah. I'm happy too. It's nice talking about this kind of stuff.